All right. Should be all good to go. Should be all live here on a bit of an early Friday slate. Let's go ahead. I do see the three of you guys here, so I do appreciate you joining me today as we. Cool. Yeah, everything's rocking and rolling. Another early slate today. I got to respond to a message I just got. I do apologize. But another early Friday slate now. I believe this is the second or third 10K to first that we've had this year. So that just means, football is right around the corner here. Sorry, I gotta respond to this really fast. I literally got this right before I went live. All right, we're rock and rolling that. Okay, sorry about that. What's going on, Eagles? Let me make sure everything is up and live on the website, which we are all good to go. All right. Go ahead and bring this up here. Anyway, as I was saying, early slate, at least early Friday, although not as bad as last week and stuff. I do want to mention that most of the contests are filling up for those of you that have not reserved entry or anything like that. I know I'm going live with quite a lot of people probably still at work and everything, but that's just how it is on a Friday. Now, as per the rules and as per usual, well, first off, practice during a hot afternoon versus a race that'll be going into the evening and into the night with temperature decreasing. So personally, I'm not very concerned about practice data, but here it is on the screen for any of you. Let me go ahead and remove this one from Carson here. Let's reorganize that here. Yet again, or just going over stuff. Giovanni's going to the rear. He had a rear seal mess up, which is not a major thing at all. All you got to do is just refill the rear axle, and then just recap it and stuff. Not a major concern, or at least for me. Now, yeah, I do want to mention that I don't understand why we are having so many brake issues, whether it be brake chatter, air in the lines like Larson at Watkins Glen last weekend. I cannot fathom why we are having this many issues. Like, if I was a team operator or at least a crew operator of the shops and stuff, I would literally I wouldn't even care. I don't even give a shit how long you would take. If I'd say bleed the brakes and do it for 2 hours. This is a 35-minute job with two people. I want you to spend 2 hours bleeding the brakes and just getting everything out. There's I don't understand what is going on where every week now we have rumbles in practice, rumbles in qualifying, rumbling in the race of just guys having brake issues. I cannot fathom that. I don't understand it. The rear seal on Giovanni, I mean, happens, whatever. But the fact that so many people were still having brake issues and stuff is beyond me. Anyway, I'm not too concerned about practice due to everything that we normally say. The separation of the groups, the different track states are racing in. We don't need to worry about that. When we look at the grid of the race, and we look specifically at the three short track races this week or this year outside of Bristol, we look at Martinsville, we look at IRP, and we can just go here. We look at North Wilkesboro. Who has had the pole in all of these races? It's Corey Heim. He started first in all three of these races. How many laps has he led in these races? Okay. He led 149 at Martinsville. He led 162 at IRP, and he only led 20 at my bad. We changed it. He led 20 at IRP. He led 162 at North Wilkesboro. Now, in both of these races, okay, he got moved. When we go and look at where the leaders came in, and what they did and everything. Obviously, he gets past 3/4 of the race through, and then we end up having just a ton of yellows that he has to survive. The fact that he loses the lead on 166, but he still survived basically two other restarts here. We see that that's what brought out, or at least brought the field up to where Corey Heim got past. We look at North Wilkesboro and the fact that yes, him and Enfinger led a majority of the race and really for the fact, Corey Heim basically led the entirety of this race here. We look at the breakdown of where he was leading and stuff. The only reason he didn't lead in this race is because he got spun at the very end by Chandler Smith. We look at what happens late with Corey Heim and Martinsville. He gets moved. Obviously, he loses the lap on 160, or he loses the lead on lap 166, but he ends up getting moved out of the way and just finishes fifth. We look at what happened at IRP. Okay, had to go, got off sequence and had a horrendous time in pit lane, still drove to the field. Now, yet again, we did have actually, my bad. I was going to say we had a yellow at the end. We did not. We go green at the end, and he's able to drive back up to third place. But if we're looking at the races this season, okay, Corey Heim is entered as the favorite. In two of them, he has uh, severely dominated the field and leading over 3/4 of the race, and then loses the win that he should have had due to late race restarts and late race yellows and stuff like that. The other race that he didn't run into issues, he actually just got beat by Lane Riggs, who had a drastically faster car. Now, this is where we can look specifically at where are these two in line. Okay, we can also look at where they're at in terms of qualifying. Now, if we go ahead and look at the Q times here, I believe Corey Heim was 2/10 faster than Lane Riggs. Why am I focusing so much on Lane Riggs and Corey Heim? Well, Lane Riggs was the driver who, flew by Lane Riggs and ended up winning the race at what the fuck is it called? At IRP. We look at where these guys are at in terms of separated time between Lane Riggs, and we look at where the separation is between Corey Heim and the rest of the field. Now, yet again, this is just for this track state late in the day. We're racing in much lower temperatures. Okay, but we look at where Corey Heim is compared to the rest of the field. We look at where he's at compared to the rest of the field at two of the three short tracks we've had this season. We look at where he's at in terms of just his speed in comparison to the rest of the field, and obviously, we can focus on Corey Heim right here, and we can see that yes, there are people who are running, close to similar lap times. I mean, you could say Majeski and Eckes and stuff. And then there's other people who have a much faster average speed that aren't going to be competing with them, obviously, like Luke, Tanner Gray, Crafton. I mean, these are drivers who, for the most part, now I know Crafton's starting seventh, and he is running faster in this practice session and in this qualifying than normal. But for me, I am perfectly okay with having Corey Heim as my favorite entering this race due to what we've seen this year at the short tracks. Okay. Now, yet again, he got beat at IRP. If you want to lean more into that, you know, and I mean, with how drastically faster, Lane Riggs was like flying through the field. There was literally nobody else around him, being able to do anything. We look at what Friesen was able to do. Now, Friesen got off sequence and pitted before the end of stage 3 and stayed up there all day and then got, moved and and wrecked towards the end of the race and stuff. We look at where Caden Honeycutt is in terms of this car, and we typically saw Stuart Friesen, starting, in the teens for the most of the season, and we do have that here. I do need to update because I was kind of wanting to get this over with. I do got to update Giovanni going to 35th and not 34th. I got Caleb in 32nd, 33rd. Right? Yeah, I just got to swap these two guys. But we look at where this field is at, and personally, if I'm paying up for 12,500 Corey Heim, which based on what we have seen, yet again, not just this season, but looking back at other races or other seasons at short tracks, then we look at what he's specifically done this year. This race is 250 laps. I think a realistic projection for him anywhere leading is like, at least 90 to 140 laps led. And then if you want to do a 3-to-1 lap led to fast lap ratio on that, I think that'd be perfectly fine and stuff. Obviously, that would project to be the highest projected guy. But what else are we doing with our lineups potentially if we're running that way? Or at least, yet again, I'm here talking about how I'm approaching the slate. Hello, Ross. What's going on, Austin? What's going on, Pope and CCAP? What's going on? I'm also not looking at the Cup Series practice. We'll focus on that later, as in later tonight and stuff. Anyway, where am I? What is my stuff showing in terms of building, in terms of what we're doing, if we're paying up and stuff? Now, if we're looking at where everybody is at, in terms of their salary, yet again, I do got to update the Geo starting 35th and not 34th. But what I'm specifically looking at here is I think Geo in a Tricon car is very easily going to be close to hitting value. I really like Brett Cruz. I really like Tanner Gray. The fact that we can pretty much play the entirety of Tricon today, I think that's a I think that's a well I think that's a place where you can not a place. I think that's a pathway to playing several drivers who are competing for at least a top 14 finish. Now, if we're paying 12.5 for Corey Heim, obviously we're going to be quite tight on salary and stuff. We really can't afford to play Caleb. If you want to play Tony, I know Austin mentioned it and stuff. I'm I would much rather possibly take a stance on Patrick and stuff, but for the most part, I kind of want to avoid the value range here because we look at regardless if it's different, if it's a different temperature, if they're practicing and stuff, in midday and stuff, and they're racing that night. Even with that said, we look at how slow this back half of the field is. I mean, we're looking at averages, right? I mean, I guess we don't have to have four decimal points and stuff, but we still look at where these guys are at and how slow they are. Even if we're not looking at averages, we just look at their lap times compared to, where the rest of the field is at. And I mean, these guys back here are incredibly, incredibly slow, right? Ryan, Caleb, Mussolini, Frankie, Spencer Boyd, Green. Like, I personally don't want to be punting here a lot, which is which is what I've really been trying to do more and more this year. Now, in the races, it has worked out. But at the end of a DFS day, it has not shown me the results that I've been wanting this year, whether that be, different, things happening. I mean, hell, just this month alone, this has been a tilting month for NASCAR DFS in general. I mean, we look back at both the Dover races of where we were at, with the rain shortened race on Saturday, and then Chastain crashing, literally throwing away $10,000 again. And then a lot of late restarts in these races. I've been personally avoiding the value ranges quite a lot this year across all three series, but specifically in races to where we have we're being forced to play like an SVG at road courses, or a Connor Zilic or a Corey Heim in the truck series and stuff, in races where they're just expected to dominate and stuff. So it just got to work out eventually, right? To where we don't get thrown a bunch of wild variants late in the race. But like, I don't know really what Caleb, what Boyd, what Frankie, what Ryan, what Clinton Green, even Matthew, in the Nice car, in the Nice 41. Like, I can't envision these guys scoring like 25 points, 28 points and stuff. I have them way closer to like 19. So if I'm going in that range, and yet again, I plan on playing quite a lot of Geo today. I really like the 8 to 7K, even the 6K range today, paired with Corey Heim. For the most part, we're not really having to punt. You're not really having to build drastically different compared to the field. We look back at where people are finishing in these races. I mean, and yet again, if you look at more races, I really don't want to include Martinsville. I really don't want to go too far back in different years, just due to the fact that we have drastically different teams and just different things going on year to year, specifically in these two lower series. But we look at where people are running and finishing here and stuff. Where are those 6K range guys? Let me go ahead and get this over here so I can see this. We look at Martinsville. Now, yet again, we're going much faster here than at Martinsville, but for the sake of this 250 laps, so we need to at least see where people are least running at these races. So let's specifically look at somebody like Gio was, which I'm not even entirely certain if Gio was in this race. I could be wrong. Gio finishes 12th. We look at, actually, we can just go and look at all of them. I don't know why I hit Control R. We're just going to refresh on accident. Whoopsie. We have Gio finishing 7th at North Wilkesboro. We look at IRP, and we look at Gio finishing 25th. Now, yet again, he's starting dead last today. Okay, 2 out of these 3 races had a top 5 or top 10 car. We continue to go down. We can look at Caden. I guess Caden's 11th. I want to look more at the guys in the middle. Sorry. We look at Raja. Raja, I believe he got spun at IRP late in that race, or not late, but I'm pretty sure he got in the wall or something. Anyway, Martinsville, Raja finishes 8th. We look at, I had refreshed. Whoopsie. We look at Raja, finishing 15th at North Wilkesboro. We then look at where he's at IRP, and we see, I believe he got spun or took damage, or I guess he drove back through it, finishing 10th. What type of outcomes is not even outcomes, but what type of projections is Raja getting in these situations? If compared to where he is starting today in the, if I can find this little fellow starting 21st today, I think that's right in the range of a pretty decent value day. I just don't see situations where a lot of the 7 and 8K guys are completely failing. I mean, hell, you even look at somebody like Ben Rhodes starting 17th. Yet again, typically we like playing Ben Rhodes if he's starting in the middle of the pack due to the potential upside that he has, that him and his crew chief has in terms of strategy and stuff. IRP finishes 11th. We look at Ben Rhodes at North Wilkesboro, finishes 23rd. We look at where he's at Martinsville, and we see Ben Rhodes finish 5th. Like, I mean, I'm going to be playing a lot of different combinations in the 7K range, mainly just because we're having to pay up for Corey Heim 12.5. I don't, especially with this slate being 7,000 people, and a lot of these contests being pretty small, and them filling, and the fact that we have a if I'm not mistaken, a pretty decent MLB slate today that people are going to probably be focusing on. Yeah, it's 12 game MLB slate that most people are going to be focusing on and stuff. I just don't think we need to really overthink it today. I don't think we really need to be taking a lot of different stances. I mean, I haven't even mentioned Corey LaJoy and Carson Quapple. The fact that if Corey Heim, and I guess if you're playing anybody else, you can put an asterisk or substitute Corey Heim in that for whatever driver you're expecting to lead the race. The fact that the main points in this field are coming from potentially this range with place differential plays in the AK range. For the most part, Corey LaJoy and Carson Quapple have pathways to be I guess Gio would have the best chance of being the second scorer. But in terms of where everybody in this race should end up scoring, like at the end of the DraftKings slate, where they should be at, Corey LaJoy and Carson Quapple should, for the most part, outscore everybody up above them in terms of salary. Okay, so it's really as if this range doesn't exist. You're playing whoever you think is going to lead the most amount of laps, and then your player pool starts at 8,700. Yet again, if I'm not really focusing on the value here, if we're playing specifically in this range here, or even Andre, I mean, for the most part, it's Corey LaJoy to Andres and stuff, or if you want to punt or whatever. I think it's very easily to just get your pool in through this area of the salary. Like I just don't think we need to really overthink it today. This is how I'm going to approach it. 7,000 people, we just don't need to get that drastically different. Also, yet again, we have the Cup race tomorrow and stuff, and then Daytona next week. I don't know a lot of things. Not a lot of things are up in the air, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to go live for either of those 2 races I'm most likely gonna be I'm gonna start moving my partner's stuff into the new house, which at this point we should close on. I mean, most likely either tomorrow or Monday and stuff. So that's been exciting, but I don't know if I'm gonna be able to go live next week for Daytona. Um, I guess I'll keep you guys updated, but that's where my, or at least that's all I know right now. And I'm probably gonna be playing pretty heavily that weekend. So I think Discord is probably gonna be the best place to get, my opinions or my exposures or whatever question you guys might have for Daytona right now. Let me see if there's anything else going on in the YouTube chat. The 71, which is give me a moment. We already talked about Raja. That's fine. We talked about, okay, yeah. So that was Raja. Yeah, we basically talked about everything. I don't remember what else I was going to say. Oh, Shoots will be live in 25 minutes to talk about the MLB slate tonight. I do want to say that, lastly, obviously we're getting closer to the NFL season. Most of you guys already know this, right? If you've been around playing DFS or whatever, right? August for current DFS players, obviously get your tickets for NFL. I personally don't play best ball. I don't like best ball. That's just not me. But you have a chance to get a lot of tickets for, obviously, the opening night for the NFL opening week. Try and get as many of those as possible. Secondly, September, for me, that's why Daytona next week is so important, because typically I roll that backs my bankroll for the rest of the year and just in general. But coming out of Daytona into the first 3 weeks of the NFL season, that's usually when I play the heaviest of the entire year, just because there's so many contests. We pretty much have overlay and pretty decent paying contests the first 3 weeks of the season and stuff. So, if you're a DFS player, specifically if you don't exactly know what you're going to do next year with the tax changes and stuff, I'd be focusing on Daytona and just rolling that into the NFL season in September. Oh yeah, tickets. DraftKings is just giving out tickets right now. I would be doing everything in your power to get any ticket you want. I know I don't normally yap about that, but even just the given the special offer for the UFC thing, you enter that UFC thing tomorrow 3 times, you get 3 $5 tickets for the Millionaire Maker or whatever, right? Why would you not do that? Why would you not get all the free tickets you can? They have that stuff every day. If you're not taking advantage of that, I don't know what you're doing. I feel like you're leaving a lot of free money on the table. Might not seem a lot, but that's what I would do. I already have 7 tickets into the fucking Millionaire Maker and stuff, an opening day thing, and I've just been just doing my normal stuff. You guys already know this. I don't gotta tell you. See you guys later. Best of luck. Yeah, see you later. Bye-bye.